Welcome lads, ladies and gentlemen, to the top 5 custom zombies boss fights. In this video, we're diving headfirst into the amazing world of Easter eggs within custom zombies, and specifically the boss fights found within them. The list will be comprised of only maps that are publicly available and released, so Patreon maps are not included in this list. So naturally, you can find the download links for all of the maps and boss fights featured in the description. So without further ado, let's dive into number 5, which is Atonement. Fears were already set high enough in this map when players learned that the dog round in this map is not a dog round at all, and in fact pits players one-on-one against a Panzerhound from Wolfenstein. So it should have come to no surprise when players entered the boss fight of the main Easter egg, only to find the mother of all Panzerhounds waiting patiently in the arena. Players in this boss fight have to fend off, of course, normal zombies as well as keepers and Raps drones whilst they try and take down this genuinely terrifying boss. This Panzerhound has a range of moves, including but not limited to charge attacks and of course a flamethrower from its mouth. To make matters worse, you can't directly damage this thing with just your weapons alone, and instead you'll need to survive whilst you wait for a Tesla death ray to charge, and interacting with that is the only thing that can actually damage this thing. The tension in this boss fight is a large part of what makes it so enjoyable. And of course the map itself that encompasses this Easter egg is also 10 out of 10, especially when you consider the time frame that Atonement released, which was a good 5 years ago at this point. This map, as well as this whole Easter egg, was just so far ahead of its time. And to be honest, I don't feel like I really need to explain why having a Wolfenstein boss in COD Zombies is badass, because it just is. The boss fight arena, which takes place underneath the main map, has a real nice level of detail, especially for a map from 2019, particularly when considering the small things like where the Raps drones spawn from being the pipework found underneath the flooring, which of course in this case, as you're underground, is directly above you. With how many enemies you actually face all in once in this boss fight, the adrenaline is through the roof and it is so much fun to play. This map and this boss fight definitely shook the community up. Madgaz, the map developer, did an unbelievable job and it easily earns its place on this list. Coming in at number 4, we have Victis. The effort put into this boss fight is truly remarkable. Not only does this Easter egg have fully fledged cutscenes as well, but the boss in this map even has all original voice acting, which really brings the whole thing together. It'll have players completing numerous side objectives within the boss fight itself to expose your target and leave them vulnerable to your attacks. It'll have players fighting whilst essentially playing uplink. It will even have players locked in rooms against mini bosses whilst fighting a huge array of different enemy types, from normal zombies to manglers to tempests and more. These side objectives that you must complete to beat this boss also come with the nice surprise of additional environments within the boss fight arena itself. So it's not one generic square, there are different areas within the boss fight arena that open up as you progress, which I think is really cool, because a dynamic boss fight arena definitely makes for more intriguing gameplay. The boss itself has a healthy range of attacks that make gameplay even more interesting, from direct sweeping laser attacks to completely electrifying the ground floor. Coupled with the aforementioned dialogue, this boss fight is truly epic, and the end cutscene really acts as the icing on the cake. Thankfully as well, the journey to the boss fight throughout the main quest is engaging and not too strenuous at all, especially as the general gameplay of Victis is a complete step away from the Black Ops 3 formula, providing a fresh take on the Outbreak mode from Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. And love that or hate it, it's still fresh for Black Ops 3. But all in all, Connor and their team did a great job with the Victis boss fight, and it more than deserves its spot in a number 4 place on this list. Jumping into number 3 now, we have one of my favorite maps for Easter eggs of all time, and that is Nightmare. Before we even get to this boss fight, it's worth mentioning that Nightmare fundamentally is an Easter egg based map. It is not a round based zombies map. This map is purposely built for the main quest. That is the entire identity of the map itself. Even though this video is focusing solely on main boss fights, the extra bosses you fight along the way to the main boss fight are so much fun to take on in this map. RDV and their team hands down produced one of the best story-based zombies maps I've ever seen, and I believe any zombies fan with a PC has to play this map and complete it at least once in their life. But moving to the boss fight itself, following a short set of cutscenes, you will be pitched against the Nightmare, which is of course what the map is named after. Now, the fundamental mechanics of this map really go hand in hand with what makes this boss fight great. As there are no perks on this map, players must use adrenaline shots that are scattered around this small boss fight arena in order to gain the perk attributes of Double Tap, Juggernog, and Speed Cola. This is only temporary though, as it literally acts as an adrenaline shot, and so you have to manage your resources that are available, as well as fend off against a ton of debris that's being thrown at you whilst battling battling the zombie-like enemy types found within this map. What I also like is that this boss fight has effectively a second stage. Once you get to a certain point in damaging the enemy, they will lean forward and go more close quarters, at which point their attack pattern completely changes, sending you into some kind of panicking fit, effectively trying to heal yourself and deal enough damage to take this thing down. The boss fight arena itself is highly detailed but super claustrophobic, which to me is my favorite recipe for a challenging boss fight, and it's of course encompassed in a map that is just generally 10 out of 10. The icing on the cake here as well is that as this is a story-based map, there is an awesome end cutscene to finish it all off. And to be honest, any map with a custom end cutscene is definitely worthy of playing. The effort that goes into maps like these is truly remarkable. To make this even better, this map is the first I'd seen that featured a checkpoint system in which if a certain step of this Easter egg, including the boss fight, has you beaten down, you can actually resume from what is effectively a save point, preventing the frustration of ending your entire run and starting from the beginning. As such, Nightmare takes a podium position in this list. Moving on to number 2, we have Rainy Death. Hitmanvir, the map developer, did just an unbelievable job with this whole map in general. As many of you know, this is actually my favorite custom zombies map of all time. But the boss fight is truly where it shines. Not only does it pitch players against a boss from Titanfall, but the enemy itself has a huge range of different and very interesting attacks. The boss fight arena is not actually a dedicated part of the map, but this is of course by design to blend beautifully with the boss's main attacks. An example of this is how you can fight on the ground floor, however the boss can completely cover the ground floor in electricity, and so you're forced to go on one of the elevated platforms and fight in a more claustrophobic environment. The boss can spawn a variety of mini-boss enemies such as these really annoying spider drones that can blow up, all whilst dealing ranged blade attacks, as well as being able to seal off half of the boss fight arena and nuke the arena itself, forcing players to duck for cover in one specific small section of the arena. As you progress through the stages of this boss fight, attacks will become more frequent and more ferocious. Some of these attacks are also quite hard to predict, so you'll be on your toes and constantly trying your best to assess the situation and make tough decisions. Now, one topping to the cake that is this boss fight is that, like some of the others in this list, it also comes with custom cutscenes, which is always a very nice thing to see. But the second and most substantial topping for this boss fight, in my opinion, is that if you die in this boss fight after putting hours of effort into getting here, you might be pretty bummed out. However, thankfully, in a similar fashion to Nightmare, this boss fight acts as a save point. So in this Easter egg, so long as you get to the boss fight, you have as many cracks at it as you want. Dying in this boss fight only resets you to the beginning of the boss fight itself, which to me, I think it's a brilliant idea because nothing hurts more than spending about 2 hours trying to work out and complete an Easter egg only to die at the very last stage. I remember when I streamed this for the first time and I thought it was all over and I was so gutted, and I found out you can just retry it without having to start the whole map all over again. It was so refreshing, and to be honest, having this feature be a pleasant surprise in an Easter egg that's this long, this feature very nearly made me put this map in the number 1 spot. But overall, this boss fight is without doubt 10 out of 10, and the map itself is 10 out of 10. If you haven't played it and you own Black Ops 3 on PC, please just go into the description, download and play this map. You will not regret it. And now we come to honorable mentions, and in typical Kunjora fashion, I've got way too many of these and I probably just should have made a top 10. These honorable mentions are in no particular order. Kicking off with Seppuku by Simbo. This one is known by a lot of people. A stairway challenge map with pretty much every mini boss known to zombies. Players will fight their way to the top and be greeted against a keeper they must fight whilst juggling, again, all of these side bosses. What made this map well known though is that in this boss fight, it has a dedicated custom song made by the map developers designed to hype you up whilst you come face to face with not only this giant keeper, but also a dragon. Our next honorable mention goes to BO3 Declassified. This boss fight has players directly fighting Samantha in an environment closely resembling the frozen forest. The boss fight is broken into separate stages and has players fighting against a range of unique attacks. Next up, Waterpark Zombies, another honorable mention in this list, but only an honorable mention due to a couple of things. One is the controversy surrounding this map, and also the fact that the official version was since taken down. Now you can only play the re-uploaded version. It's a bit of a mess, but the boss fight itself is actually really good, super engaging, and super in tune with the Infinite Warfare theme that flows throughout the map. Players use glasses to expose weak points on an enemy that might be familiar to those who have played Attack of the Radioactive Thing. You'll be hot on your toes trying to survive this one, and it is a great challenge and very fun to play. Up next, we have Seatown, another honorable mention in which there are different, very interesting stages in this boss fight. Some will have you standing in these orbs for protection. Some stages will have you literally doing parkour. It's a very interesting and diverse palette of different things that are required to take this boss down, and for that reason, this project from Logical deserves its spot in the honorable mentions on this list. Blasting through the next set of honorable mentions, we have Moria and Serpent's Call from Spectralian. In Moria, you will face the Bullrog, and I really don't need to say much more than that, do I? It's a super intense boss fight, very high octane, and just an unbelievable thing to witness. And in similar fashion, we have the boss fight from Serpent's Call, in which you're facing a dragon one-on-one in close quarter combat. Both of these boss fights are epic, and both of them come from the same developer, and they definitely both deserve to be mentioned in this list. Now, of course, we couldn't have a list of the top Custom Zombies boss fights without mentioning Wanted by Zeroy. Quite an old map at this point, but had an awesome boss fight in which players had to take down Leroy. The whole Easter egg for this map was pretty engaging, and especially for its time, this map is absolutely brilliant. Not only that, but once you kill Leroy and actually grab the part you need, you escape from the map in a DeLorean in a Back to the Future-like style. This map is truly a classic, and I had to include it. And on to the last few honorable mentions, we've got Westland coming from Planet here, where this developer decided to actually feature 2 boss fights in one map. Both of these boss fights have different approaches to how you take them down, and the fact that this is a main Easter egg where you can choose the boss you face is super original and, in my opinion, definitely worthy of being in this list. The boss fights are engaging, are fun, and the map itself that encompasses it is absolutely brilliant. Next up, we got Mori Rebirth from Emox that has a boss fight that pitches players against the Cosmic Silverback from Dead Ops Arcade. Anyone who remembers the first-person mod that came out for the original Dead Ops on Black Ops 1 is really going to enjoy playing this boss fight. And it is actually surprisingly difficult, as the Cosmic Silverback has a huge amount of health, and you only have the farm area from transit to play in, which, to be honest, can be pretty claustrophobic. You will be challenged here. And moving on to the final audible mention, we have Dark Plan. This project from Blue Shark and Simbo has a boss fight in which players face a colossal enemy reminiscent of the boss from Rave in the Redwoods. This boss can hurl debris, smash players into oblivion, and all sorts, and ultimately it keeps you on your toes and very engaged throughout. But now we're done with the admittedly huge list of honorable mentions. We come to number 1, and I'm sure most of you could have guessed, it's Leviathan. In terms of boss fights, this map delivers not 1, but 2 highly detailed, brilliantly thought out main boss fights. The first boss fight against the Diver has its own dedicated boss fight arena. A range of attacks, including a harpoon gun, is what players will have to face with whilst they try and take this guy down. His entrance is marked with a custom cutscene, and whilst you fight the hordes of zombies as well as jumping jacks as well, you'll also need to be conscious of the fact that this enemy can jump into the middle and perform the same devastating attack that the Keeper from Der Eisendrache can do that instantly kills players if you're not stood behind a pillar. This means that this first boss fight is actually pretty difficult, especially for new players who might have not actually completed the Der Eisendrache boss fight. If ensnared by the harpoon, players have to melee to get out of it, and whilst juggling this against fighting the hordes, you have to keep on your toes and very conscious of your surroundings. Couple this with a beautifully detailed boss fight arena and a perfect atmosphere that encompasses the boss fight itself and really provides a kind of sinister and genuinely daunting tone. This first boss fight is absolutely brilliant. In beating this boss, you also get awarded the 1-inch punch, and of course in this map, this is not the only boss fight. The last boss fight again has its own cutscenes and has players going into a mini submarine and embarking on a ship in which they face not only the Diver, but a colossal sea serpent that's just so huge in scale that the first time you enter this boss fight, your jaw will drop a little. It has a wide range of attacks again, from a sweeping laser attack to a devastating move that, if you're not behind a container, will wipe anyone exposed. Couple this against the enemies that you face in general, and again, you're up against the Diver as well, and you have an extremely high octane challenging boss fight. And again, as it takes place on this ship, it is a custom dedicated boss fight arena outside of the map itself, just like the first boss fight, and there's even another short and sweet Easter egg cutscene for when you beat them. So when you kind of blend all of this together, you just have to appreciate the effort and passion that went into this entire Easter egg, and especially the boss fights found within Leviathan. Jaybird did an unbelievable job with this map, and it definitely, most certainly deserves the number 1 spot on this list. And there we have it. That's our list for the top 5 Custom Zombies boss fights in maps that are available right now. Again, you can download all of these with the links in the description. I want to personally thank all of these map developers for bringing these incredible creations to the community, and I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.